So, welcome to episode 20 of season 4. If you've just joined, this is Maria at Maria the Arcane on just about everything. And I'm joined by our supreme, our goddess, our
You can't
Robyn,
see it, but I'm saluting.
and a tired witch on just about everything.
On all platforms.
I'm so glad I remembered that instead of just saying on Instagram.
And later this episode, we are joined by Yunan Kirkbride to talk about Death Witchery, which will be so fun.
Mm-hmm. And then we also have a death magic class happening October 28th. And that's going to be hosted by Hannah Hadidi of Morning Light Divination.
Yes.
So,
and I've taken Hannah's classes before. They're really good. I'm super excited for it. Even if you guys don't show up, I'll be there. And don't forget that if you can't make it to the live class, it is recorded and it is available on Patreon at any time later in the future. So if this is something that you're super interested in, but you're like, I can't make this class, you can still join us at the library tier at any time to catch up with it later.
Yeah, not to mention we have a ton of classes already up on our Patreon, like a crap ton.
Classes, articles, special episodes, ad-free versions of the podcast. I mean, there's a ridiculous amount of stuff happening on Patreon, and we're super excited to share with you guys.
Yeah, come to
If you've just joined us this week, every week we talk about upcoming lunar phases and how you can utilize those in your spiritual practice, in your magical practice. Now that being said, we have on October 28th, we've got the full moon in Taurus. Marie and I were just talking about this. Technically, it starts on the 27th because we have the Maiden, Mother, and Crone. Mm-hmm. And if you do start on the 27th, it is still in Aries, which you can just refer back to last time's full moon to learn how to utilize that, because I'm not going to double repeat myself.
Yeah, that's just like the whole importance of like, don't just take a practitioner's or even your moon phase like calendars at surface value.
I really recommend, if you are somebody who does utilize moon phases, to download a moon app where it will give you like the exact time that the moon like switches into a full moon or a new moon or a dark moon. And then it will also tell you exactly like what zodiac sign it is at that time. So I would recommend that. But like I said, if you are somebody who's going to work with it on the 27th, I recommend you looking at our last full moon episode, which was 2 main episodes ago, I believe. Yep. But for those of you who aren't and are going to work with it on the 28th, we have the full moon in Taurus, which is also going to be a blood moon. So that being said, the Taurus full moons, they bring really big shifts when it comes to like our sense of security. Taurus in general is like a sign that talks about things like our home, our security, the things that kind of make us feel safe. And so if we're looking at magic that is going to be utilizing this energy, I would look into home and hearth magic. Simultaneously, when was the last time you did some home protections? This would be a really good time to do that. If you are somebody who is fortunate enough to have a full sacred space for your altar, or even just like a meditation room, whatever it might be, this would be a really good time to top up wards in there, do cleansing, that sort of thing, and really just kind of utilize, I don't know, holding it down.
Yeah.
That's what I would do specifically, especially when we consider the fact that we're moving so close to Samhain and what a lot of people believe is the thinning of the veil. Again, I think that happens way more often than once a year, but everyone is entitled to their own opinion on that. So if you are somebody who does believe strongly in the thinning of the veil happening at the end of the month, around Halloween, etc., this is also a really good time to put up wards and protections when it comes to spirits, psychic protections, etc. I mean, when was the last time you washed your window frames and door frames with chamomile? Maybe this is the time to do it. Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
So for me, I definitely agree on all the home and protection stuff, especially, the last thing you want to think about, like in the next couple months when you're trying to be cozy, dealing with family and stuff like that. You don't want to think about like if you've refreshed your wards or if you have done protection work. So just go ahead and like knock that out and have everything protected. So you just be your cozy self. But I also think, Tauruses tend to love excess of like material, like they love material things, they love like the finer things in life. I mean, as you should, like treat yourself.
They're dragons.
Yeah, but like I think this moon would be a great time to just, if you want an overabundance of something like, prosperity work, like obviously, we're coming up on the holidays, you want a little bit of extra cash in your pocket. So why not just do a huge like, hey, universe, I would like a little bit of extra money in my pocket, please, to kind of like help me out here in the next couple of months. That would be great. Like, I just think that would be like the perfect time to like lay the groundwork for that and do like a quick and easy, like quick money spell.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So if you just joined us for this episode or haven't listened to other episodes so far this season, in lieu of like choosing a card and discussing it like we were doing, we're just having like whole conversations about the whole different sections in tarot, like the minor arcana, the major arcana, the aces, the ones, and so on. And we're actually today on the final of this series. So like after like we're done talking about this card afterwards, I'll tell you our plans for the next time. So keep an ear out. But anyways, this week we are discussing the last and final section, our thoughts on the kings. So for me, the kings are the cultivators of kingdoms. I equate kingdoms with our long-term goals in our lives. And in order for a king to cultivate an amazing and thriving kingdom in their unique suits, they must think strategically, logically, and play ahead. The king is willing to justify losses as long as the ends justify the means. They play the long game. They typically are kind of selfish, but I want to say that sometimes we have to be like selfish in life in order to cultivate our goals. Sometimes we do have to come first, but I digress. They can, but like not always be selfish in the fact that they will do something for others as long as it either makes them make them look good or just adds to their prosperity, strength, and health of their kingdom. Now, what does this all mean in a reading? So for myself, when a king pops up, it's time to like buckle down and get things done. But also, in the same breath, be patient. You can't build anything on shaky foundations. It's going to take a lot of thought, time, and consideration to build up a personal kingdom to make it worthwhile. And as I said, personal kingdoms are our long-term goals. But as I mentioned, kingdoms typically represent the goals, and they're representative of the suits. Like the cups would be long-term happiness, pence would be long-term prosperity or routines, wands would be long-term paths, passions that continue to serve us, and then the swords would be like long-term strength of character and mental health or resilience. The kings can also tell us to be kind of ruthless. If someone or something is no longer serving us, we do not have to keep them in our lives or keep them engaging in our goals. Boundaries are so important to thriving kingdoms, and while we may need to push them from time to time, but once again, the end has to justify the means.
Totally.
How do you view this card? Well, these cards.
For me, the kings are the completion of the suit. So we have, in any suit, you have this journey that you've gone through, right? Both the good and the bad. And the king is a representation of everything we've learned from everything in the suit up until that point. And so it's mature. It is level-headed. It is able to reflect on the bad and take positive lessons from it, and also relish in the negative or in the positive to try to cultivate that again. And so for me, the king is of course it really depends on the context, but for me, it's really a deep reflection of reminding us to slow down, think about it, let's view the picture as a whole and move forward. And so, you know, if we got the king, let's say the king of pence, let's say for a financial outlook, it's telling us that you're going to most likely make really good decisions for yourself, trust in your intuition, and trust the fact that, you know, you have got this. You've learned everything you can regarding this at that, like that moment, make the best decisions for yourself. Yeah. And so for me, it's just like this really big reminder that we've done all the hard lessons and the rewarding positives to really just trust ourselves in that moment.
That makes sense. So next time that we do the tarot cards, we're actually going to bring up subjects. Like for the next one, we might be doing like new beginnings, but we won't be just talking about the Fool. We'll be talking about many cards that can represent like a new beginning, a fresh start, you know, and then we'll go into like love and like bad relationships, just like huge, like how you can view cards like in a different light, because I feel like, you know, we equate some cards with one thing and some cards with another thing, but they can mean many things. So hopefully this would be like a great way to learn and to, you know, broaden your horizons, you know, to different meanings of different cards. Yeah, but I'm really looking forward to it.
As we said earlier in the episode, we are joined today by Yunan of Death Witch Envy, and author of several Death Witchcraft zines that I know I've shared before on my social media. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Wow, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love zines. Zines are so underrated.
They really are. Well, it's a dying thing. You know that a lot of the members of our Discord who are younger didn't know that's how it's pronounced? Like, it's short for magazine. And I was like, oh, but you guys don't really have magazines anymore, do you? So.
Yeah. People still make them. I was introduced to them by an old college professor.
Oh, yeah. And they were huge when I was in college, so.
Yeah. Like in high school and stuff, I love them. I collected them all the time.
So that being said, you want to introduce yourself and let our listeners know a little bit about you?
Hi, yeah, I'm Yunan Kirkbride. Right now I tattoo for a living, but I've also written a bunch of Death Witchcraft zines. I've written Death Witchcraft blogs. I started on Tumblr and then moved to a website. I've been working in the witchcraft and pagan scene for like 15 years now. Death Witchcraft, though, probably the last 7 years, I want to say.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think I found you on social media like maybe 6 years ago. So that feels correct to my personal timeline.
God, I'm old. Yeah, 7 or 8, I want to say.
Well, if you're old, then I'm ancient. So, and Maria's dead.
Yeah. So, in your practice, how do you define death witchery?
I would define death witchery as working with the souls of the dead, but also with the concept of death, handling your own death, handling yourself and others through grief, as well as spiritual deaths in your life. For example, ending of like a relationship or ending a certain part of your life, like transferring from high school to college tends to be like a really big spiritual death for people because you're leaving a lot behind, for example. Anything within that realm can be under the umbrella of death witchery.
In your own personal practice, do you utilize kind of all of those things, or are you more focused on one facet?
Normally, I'm focused on working with the souls of the dead unless there is something coming up in my life where I need to shift focus. If I had, members of my family die, which has unfortunately happened a lot, then we're going to be shifting to the grieving and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
It depends on what comes up.
Yeah.
So what separates it from ancestor veneration in your opinion?
I'd say ancestor veneration is a part of the whole. it's a practice you can do within Death Witchcraft, but that's not all it is. There are also... Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say there are other souls of the dead. So ancestors are anyone within your family tree, your biological or your spiritual family tree. And there are other souls of the dead. You can work with like the forgotten dead who might have had their gravestones destroyed or chafed down to where you can't see it. Some people will focus on children or animals or veterans.
Veterans makes a lot of sense because, at least in my knowledge, veterans get forgotten a lot when it comes to graves, because a lot of the times they get put in their own cemetery, and then it's just pretty easy to forget them.
Yeah,
you just plop them in there and then forget all about them.
Which is interesting because when you look back at a lot of like ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian death work, old soldiers were frequently pop up in their
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's a culture shift, right? So kind of branching off of that, what's something that you think is like the most misunderstood about death witchcraft? Like in general, I know that there's like the coming back of satanic panic and these ideas that are just very negative, very like evil focused, I guess you could say. And I think that when we talk about things like death work, it's really easy to associate these evil and negative ideas. Like, you know, people have negative connotations with the word necromancy, for example. Like,
or even like the death card. Like the death card
even like
the
death card, 1,000%. So what would, in your experience, do you think is like the most misunderstood thing about somebody who does death work?
I mean, I think you nailed it right there, is people saying that it's somehow dangerous. I work with Hades a lot. He's one of my main deities, and I have lost count of the amount of people who have sent messages to me saying something like, hey, I've heard from other people in the community that working with him is very dangerous. I'm like, where are you hearing that? I've never read anything like, when you're looking at the history.
The answer is TikTok.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at the actual religion and the actual sources, there's nothing saying anything like that.
Right.
It's just like people hear his name and they're just like, oh, that guy, you can't. Anything with the word death is has a big red X over it.
Yeah, anything that lives in the underworld is evil. Like,
exactly.
People assume. So it's like, no. I mean, you know, soil, the ground and stuff, it literally, its whole job is to, you know, death dies there and new growth sprouts up. Like there's nothing wrong with the below. But
death is just another transformation, right?
Exactly. So, what are some tools or ingredients you think anyone getting into this kind of work should have?
I have a huge list of tools on like blog posts and stuff. It depends on what you're into. Although if you're starting, I think I'd recommend start with some form of divination. Because first off, you're going to be using it a lot. And second, if you're not super comfortable with divination yet, it can take a while to figure out which methods you're most comfortable with.
Yeah,
so it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of people are super into tarot. I'm actually not one of those people, but tarot works.
What do you use then for divination? Like, what's your preferred method then?
My preferred methods are bone throwing and scrying. I have this big obsidian mirror that took forever for me to find, and I use that a lot.
Dang, what's it like to be the richest person alive?
You know how I got it is I have family who lives in Tucson, and they have like a big gem show there, and my dad's always looking for like deals on crystals and stuff. So if I go somewhere, he's like, you know, you can find a good deal on crystals over here.
Oh, that's nice.
And then you did. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's how I got it.
I've never been that lucky in my life.
It's really hard to find. The first time I ever visited Portland, I swear to God, I visited so many stores here. I was like, one of them's got to have it.
Yeah.
One of them's got to have it. I talked to every single store owner, and they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. There are no obsidian mirrors. I had to go to like this tea and witchy shop in Idlewild of all places, like in the mountains of Southern California, and they just had one. It's so weird and random, but they're just like, we have it, nobody wants it.
It's more random that they didn't know what you were talking about.
I know, I'm surprised too.
How does one run a metaphysical shop and go, scrying mirror? I've never heard of that before.
Exactly. This question isn't on like the questions that we have, but a lot of like death work, which is like to create an altar. Like, do you have an altar for death? And what do you put on it? Like, just in case anyone wants to build an altar for,
that's a good question. I have 2 altars behind me. I just moved, so this is a very bad time because I can't be like, wow, look at this nice altar back here because it's all boxes and trash.
You're going through a transition.
Exactly. The death of my old altar and the rebirth of a lamp I can't put anywhere else. But normally I have 2. So I have one for Hades. That's mainly him, and then I have like a general working one where I can basically do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And usually I'll have some space in between to work with like any other deities, like Toth or something like that. Mm-hmm. Just because I have way too many things that I like to put on altars.
Preach.
Yeah.
You are preaching to the literal choir. So I guess my question for you going off of that then is that, because I know that we encounter this a lot when we have like Discord member questions and stuff like that, mm-hmm. is you talked about having like a general altar and then one dedicated to Hades. A lot of time we hear people asking questions about things like, well, can I have too many? What does that look like? How do we create the space? And I guess my question for you then is, do you have them kind of side by side? Are they in totally different like rooms or aspects of your house? Like, how does that play out for you?
Right now, I have them in the same spot because I have this really, really long console table that mm-hmm. I bought a few years ago just for altars, essentially. But back when I was, in college or right after college, I would usually have them in different spots. If I were lucky, I could keep them in the same room, but oftentimes you're not that lucky, especially if you live with other people.
Yeah.
I usually say I'd have like a small table, and it would be like a general, like a Hades table or something, or a general mm-hmm. table. My first few years of college, I was taking stuff out to the balcony to like set up mm-hmm. every holiday and sit out there and do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That sounds nice.
It was actually kind of nice.
That sounds cozy.
What type of offerings do you give like a death god like Hades, you personally?
I do a lot of herbs and a lot of anointed candles. I just have a lot of those, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Is there any herbs that are like your favorite or anything that you like to give them?
Ones that when you're like this herb, I think of Hades, or this herb, I think of death.
I use lavender a lot for death because it's a very calming one, very, very good for spirits. Rosemary has a lot of associations with memory, so it does that quite a bit. I have just a nice relationship with lemon balm. That's also a really good calming and healing one as well. I have a few like cypress and Yule oils that you can put on cameras, and those are both trees associated with Hades. Other things you could do is a lot of times coins are very common offerings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, most people don't know that Hades was also the god of wealth, so that makes a lot of sense.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, wealth and fine metals.
Weird?
I've never really been into like Greek gods at all, so I really don't know much about them other than like etymological stuff. I know a lot of etymological stuff that I don't know.
You'll start researching Greek. Like the Greek mythology is like so crazy and so confusing.
It is very complex.
So confusing. Like, oh no, I won't get into it.
There are a lot of sources, and they were constantly changing things. It's like the Egyptian Book of the Dead, where they were rewriting it like every century or so. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I did not know that.
So do you feel like... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I'll
you
let
go
you
ahead.
Okay. Do you need different protections than normal protections when doing death work?
If you're doing any kind of protections for spirits specifically, then you should be fine, I think. I do have some, like, specifically for, like, you know, spirits of the dead, so they don't, if you're going out to cemeteries or something, follow you home. Or something like that.
Absolutely.
There are ones specific to that. But in general, like, if you have a protection method that works for you, it's probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does death work look like if you're going to a cemetery? Because a lot of our, like, especially our Discord members love to go to, like, the cemetery and, like, honor the dead. But what does that look specifically like
I
for
love
you
doing
in your
it
practice?
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually go in with a handful of offerings and stuff. I usually like really discreet ones. We just talked about coins. Those are very, very good. Sometimes I'll do, like, dried juniper berries or something. If I'm really so familiar with the cemetery, I'll bring, like, a whole kit of stuff where it's like, all right, I'm going to bring this candle and this thing. But most of the time, it's stuff that, you know, you can bring, like, a handful of and, like, drop off at graves when you sit by them and just chat.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that when I do go to graves, I like bringing chocolate.
That's a good one.
I always feel like chocolate is a really good offering. Like, and you can just put a little Hershey's in your pocket. They come in, like, nice little squares. You can break them off. One for you, and one for you, and one for you.
That's a great idea.
And one for me as well, because I also am here and I need a little chocolate.
Well, you're sharing a meal.
Yeah.
Well, it's just
Exactly.
weird. It makes sense. You spoke a little bit about, like,
for me.
spirits, like, following you home. Do you have, like, anything that you do in order to prevent that?
Sometimes I would bring, like, a protection amulet with me that's usually a symbol or something that you keep, like, in your pocket or something, or you can just you just kind of keep track of yourself. Usually if something's following you, you can tell.
I would definitely agree with that.
It's not really gonna be sneaky. You can usually tell pretty well. I have heard a very common one is, like, if you feel something, you like throwing salt over your shoulder is a very common technique to, like, go away.
Well, just in case, like, someone's like, did something follow me home? What are, like, the particular signs that you feel like they should watch out for if something has followed you home?
If you get something is feeling after you leave the cemetery, then maybe think of protection things. Within the cemetery, things can follow you. Like, souls can follow you, gatekeepers can follow you, and a lot of times they will stop when you leave. Because they're just like, oh, you're going. You're fine.
Yeah.
If you're, like, going out and getting in your car or something and you're just like, this thing has not left me, then maybe it's time to think about throwing salt.
Yeah.
Some things to consider. All right, well, we only have one more question for you, and that is, do you have any advice or books that you would recommend to somebody who is just now, like, getting interested in this kind of work, just kind of pointing them in a direction to learn more on their own?
Yeah. Books are hard to recommend because I don't know what people are focusing on. I'd say
sure,
look into some kind of, like, funeral and death culture that you would like to focus on and start there. So, for instance, if you're thinking, like, oh, I have this really strong Irish ancestry, for example, and I want to focus on their funerary rites and how they look at the dead, then start there. if you're say, oh, I work with a lot of Greek deities and I want to look at how they work with the dead, and then start there. Take a culture where you can look into their funerary rites, and it'll help simplify it. Because if you're just looking up general funerary rites, there's going to be like hundreds of them, and they're all going to be different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you don't have to limit yourself to one either. You can be like, I want to do Norse and I want to do Egyptian. Good, that's a good starting point. And there are a few books out there where you can find, like, you know, Hilda Roderick, I think, has a good book, The Road to Hell, on death mentioned in Old Norse literature. I usually recommend Daniel Ogden for Greek and Roman stuff. He made one on Greek oracles of the dead, and also Greek and Roman necromancy, where he compiles like all of the sources that he finds, and he cites all of them.
Ooh, we love a good author who cites sources.
Yes, we love a work cited.
Yeah, and he'll usually mention them when he's writing. He's like, when you look back at this thing that was written now, and it says this. So it's pretty easy. There are quite a few books on the Egyptian Book of the Dead that kind of give you an introduction and explain it. I know the British Museum has released quite a few that are pretty affordable.
I actually think I have one.
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great chat. Can you remind our listeners just one more time where they can find you?
Thank you for having me. It's been a while since I've sat down and just chatted with people about this topic. You can find me at Death Witch Envy on Instagram.
Which will be linked in the bio.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find it. There should be a link to the website there that I'll see if it's active. I might have to reactivate it. Did I change my credit card? I don't know. I'll look into that.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye. So, Robyn, what is stirring your cauldron right now?
First of all, that's very raspy.
Thank you. It just came out just right.
Very sultry. And thank you so much for asking. Death work in general is what's stirring my cauldron right now. Not like specifically any one aspect of it, but for those of you who don't already know this about me, that's my practice. I'm a death worker. Some people call it a necromancer, but I know people have weird feelings about that title, so I tend to avoid it. But this is what I do. I work with death. And so the fact that we've got to focus on this all month has been like really new for me. I'm like, yes. Let's talk about it some more. Yeah, so it's been really exciting for me, and I've really enjoyed it, and I'm like looking forward to the rest of the month.
Yeah. I'm very, like, this month has been very good, like, death magic wise. Oh, it always is.
Yeah,
like, Octobers are always amazing for all of this.
Yeah, but I mean, I also feel like you have, like, general things like spirit communication, which is what most people tend to lean towards. But this has been so specifically, like, necromancy, death work. Death
transitions, too.
Transitions. Yeah, there's just so much stuff that's happening. It's so exciting. And I am living for it. I really am. It's been so fun. So, Maria, what's not stirring your cauldron this week?
Oh, I'm going to tell you. Okay. Honestly,
it's me.
Really, besides like the normal stuff I've talked about a billion times on the pod, I don't want to do that. But nothing's really not stirring my cauldron. Maybe it's just that I have a whole lot to do this week, but it's for good reasons. Like I have a lot of I don't know. I'm just having a really good time in October, and I'm going to be going to the Tamed Wild retreat later on this week, and I'm going to be reading cards for everybody, and I'm just really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to, like, you know, especially next week is when me and my family are, like, we've already been watching, like, scary movies and stuff like that. So now we're just going to really buckle down, watch all of the movies we haven't watched so far. And then we started doing this tradition, especially if Halloween runs during the week rather than the weekend, that weekend before, we stay up really late, watch movies, have candy, and I make a bunch of appetizers. It's kind of like our Christmas Eve, like, sort of thing. But
have you guys watched Renfield yet?
No, but that is on our to-do list.
Listen, everybody slept on that movie. It is so cute. It's really campy and, like, adorable. I loved it. I thought it was so cute. I cannot believe people didn't like it.
Yeah, I think we're going to watch that next week, and even the Witchling will get to watch it too. Like, we need to watch, we need Todd and all that.
One trigger warning for people who have just heard me say this and are like, well, no, I'll maybe watch it. There are anime levels of blood in this movie, which is part of, like, the campiness and, like, the fun, right? But just in case you're somebody who can't do blood at all, I have warned you, there are anime levels of blood. It is crazy. It's one of those, how are they still coming out of this person?
So it's like Sweeney Todd, where you're like,
it's absurd.
Wow.
It's an absurd amount of blood. And you're just like, it just keeps coming. Okay, it's still coming. Okay, yeah, no, for sure.
But yeah, like, everything is pretty good, and I'm very excited for the few weeks ahead. So
yeah, that's so good.
Thanks.
If you've just joined us this week, every week we talk about creators that we are loving right now. This could be artists, books, blogs, podcasts, photographers, just anything. Social media pages, I don't know.
Yeah.
And these are, wow, I lost my train of thought. These are not ads. These are things that Maria and I found organically. So they're not ads. They're just stuff we like that we thought maybe you would think is cool too.
Yeah.
And this season we started a third option, which is a listener submitted creator that they think the community would love as well. So that being said, Maria, who are you digging right now?
So I'm digging a creator called Wild Spellcraft, and she does, like, grimoire pages and things like that, and the grimoire pages are so gorgeous. Like I think I'm pretty okay, like, with, like, graphic design and stuff, but she, like, her grimoire pages are so gorgeous.
I'm a graphic designer, actually. I am not. It's my passion.
No. But she is just really talented at it, and it's so gorgeous. And I'm like, I want to do that. I want my stuff to look like that. Oh my God. And then she also released a tarot workbook that looks really, really neat. It, like, you just kind of, like, write your thoughts, like, on all the cards in tarot, and she kind of helps you break it down in the workbook. And I don't know, it's just really pretty too. So it's like, it's pretty and it's awesome because it's gonna help you learn tarot. But but I really dig her stuff, and you guys should check it out and dig it too. But anyways, who have you been loving?
I think a friend sent it to me originally, but I found this social media called maryinthefairyland. And they create, like, little fairy houses in nature and then, like, photograph it. I know. It's so flippin' cool. And, like, I had forgotten that the friend had sent it to me, and then I got sent one of, like, how they made a house and then photographed it. I saw it on, like, Reels or something. And I was like, oh, that looks familiar, but that's so cool. And then I realized a friend had sent it to me. Anyway, I'm just obsessed. Very freaking cool.
They are so cute. So
They're so freaking cute. I love it.
Talk about making friends with the forest spirits. You're actually, like, providing little homes.
Oh my God, it's so cute. And then this week's listener choice, I did actually have to go back because I couldn't find our listener submissions. So if you sent us something recently, resend it to us because our DMs are just a mess. We're doing our best, guys. We really are.
Well, I think our tarot challenge really took off this month. So everyone,
right, which is great. It's not a complaint.
Of course. It's not a complaint. I love fancying everyone's polls.
But it has made, I had a kind of a starred list happening, and I've lost it. So this week, this submission was a little bit old, but I thought it was really relevant to the month, and that is the Happy Halloween deck by Sony Race's Artistry. I'm pretty sure I have a copy of this deck.
Yeah, you do.
I do?
I like how you have so many decks. You're like, do I own this one?
So first of all, watch your mouth. But it's really cute. This deck is so cute, and I just thought that it was really relevant to the fact that Halloween is 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
And if you're somebody who's just spooky in general and likes that kind of vibe, I think this deck is really great. So I think this is a great submission.
Yeah, and also I think the artist is releasing a new deck, so keep an eye out for that as well.
So exciting, yes. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope that you will join us again on Friday, October 27th for our Coffee Talk episode, or on November 3rd for the 21st episode of Season 4. You can keep an eye out on our social media or head to our website, coffeeandcauldrons.com, to find out more information and see what we are up to. And don't forget to join us on October 28th on Patreon for our class with Hannah Hadidi of Morning Light Divination on Death Magic 101, which is available for everyone, library tier and up. And if you can't make it, but you are interested, it will be recorded and available immediately after the class to watch later.
And additionally, our Patreon Magical Beginnings offers our special 25-minute Part 2 episode, a huge library of articles about witchcraft, a Discord community full of fun events and discussions, and we even have a tier that offers one-on-one conversations with Robyn and myself.
So please, if you love our sexy, sensual, just chef's kiss voices, take a moment to review us on whatever streaming service that you are tuning in from, such as Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We love reading your reviews, and rating us with 5 stars helps us to be seen by others. Thank you to everybody who already has and everyone who will in the future. And also thank you to everybody who's in our Patreon. We really appreciate you guys. And yeah.
So again, this is Coffee and Cauldrons
with Robyn from At a Tired Witch.
And I'm Maria from @Maria the Arcane.
All right, ready?
Ready? Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Bye, witches!